Okay, we finished the first volume, and now we are in the second volume. I've got my old copy. I don't know. I think they did make a second volume, the newer volume, I think, and the second volume too, right? Anyway, I got the old one. We're going to start off here on a introduction there. The introduction itself. You got that? You have that beautiful picture there? Huh? Yeah. That's how Yisrayl Hawkins looked when I first met him. Okay, so here's the introduction. And this is on page 3A of my book. It says, "Greeting in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah. This world has been without the knowledge of salvation for almost 2,000 years. Now remember that, the knowledge of salvation. There was no salvation until, of course, Yeshua Messiah came, because he has the name by which salvation can be obtained. But salvation didn't really come into these last days until the house of Yahweh in the seventh era. The very last house of Yahweh was established. And salvation comes through Yisrayl Hawkins. Okay? The world doesn't understand that because they don't understand the prophecies. But when you believe in the prophecies and you read the prophecies, you see that, because he plainly tells you he will be Yahweh's salvation to the ends of the earth. And if I remember right, that is in Isaiah 49. Maybe I should have had the page marked, huh? 49, let's see, he says, yeah, be glorified. Oh, yes. Right here. Isaiah 49, where he says, "And it is not enough for you, my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore the protected of Israel. I will also give you as a light to the Gentiles, so that you may be my salvation to the ends of the earth." The ends of the earth. Okay? The salvation. So, this man, of course, was inspired by Yahweh through Yeshua to write these things. And that's what he's done. He's fulfilling his commission. Okay, so he says, even the Bible's truth have been hidden from the world. The Bible itself even says the whole world is deceived in Revelations 12:9. That the God of this world, as the Apostle Shalom was inspired to write, has blinded the minds of the people. 2 Corinthians 4, verses 3 and 4, "But if our message is hid, it is hid to them that are lost, in whom the God of this world has blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious message of the Messiah, who is the image of Yahweh, should shine into them." Now, many of those who believe what the Bible and the Scriptures actually says will read these two previous Scriptures and then believe what these two Scriptures has just told us. Okay? And notice what he says here. Many who believe what the Scripture actually says will read these two previous verses and then believe what these two Scriptures have just told us. Now, we just read through them. Let's go back and read it again, okay? 2 Corinthians 4, verse 3 and 4. "But if our message is hidden," okay, "it is hid to those who are lost." Now, this is the same thing that Yeshua was done. Remember, Yeshua even told his disciples, "Go only to the lost sheep of Israel," right? Because there were thousands who did believe, but not all could accept that message and stay with it. But notice, he says, they're lost, okay? "In whom the God of this world has blinded the minds of them which believe not." Okay? Satan has a job, and her job is to keep the whole world deceived. Okay? That's a very important job and a very big job, and you can see, how 7 billion people have their minds deceived. Why? "Lest the light of the glorious message of the Messiah, who is the image of Yahweh, should shine into them." See, that's the reason. Yahweh uses Satan to deceive the world on purpose. to keep the whole world blinded and deceived, stupid and ignorant, so that they don't know and understand the message of Yahweh. Why is that? Well, the prophets tell you the reason why. Because if everybody would believe and automatically have their eyes open, then Yahweh's plan could never come to completion. Because he's selecting only those and testing only those who he knows has the capabilities to become as he is. Okay? Because remember, he could have done this with his original sons. He could have done this with all the Malachim and allowed them to be able to take the place. But he didn't. We read where he says, to what of the Malachim, to which ones of them did he say and call his sons? Okay? There's a reason why he allows these things to take place. So he goes on and he says, some of these will study what their own Bibles say, believing what their Bibles say, and will come out of the deception of this world. And remember, it was the Bible that we used. Okay? You didn't use the book of Yahweh. You originally started off with a Bible. You know, that's how people begin reading the scriptures, because King James is so prevalent in this world. Or there's many other different versions that people can use, but they use that. And then once they come to know and understand the name of Yahweh, then they find out about the book of Yahweh, and they obtain it. So some will study their own Bibles, say what their Bibles say, believing what their Bibles say, and will come out of the deception of this world. Many others, however, will refuse to obey the very Bible that they claim to follow, and will be caught in the curses written against them. Others will believe only parts of the Bible, preferring to think the scriptures contained therein are for a nebulous, distant future that will not have to concern themselves with. Okay, nebulous means difficult to see and to understand. Okay, something that's far off, and they always like to put the prophecies in the distant future. You know, no one likes to admit that prophecy actually comes to pass. Now, they've got the Bible that they say that they believe in, but Christians don't even believe in prophecy. You know, the only prophecy that they want to believe in is that Jesus is coming back to save them. And that's not in the Bible. Nowhere in it, okay? That's not a prophecy. That's a falsehood. But they don't believe it, and they want to push everything off into the future, you know, and never believe what the scriptures say. Well, these two would be caught up in the soon-coming, earth-shaking world events now swiftly developing. And this has much more urgency to us now. The fact is that we are running out of time. Notice. Literally. We are running out of time because this is the last time. This is the time period in which the prophecy spoke of. We are in the last days, the last time, and we are running out of time. And the prophecies describe the time in the last days written for our warning, notice. And it's upon us now. The Savior said mankind would be capable of completely destroying all life from the face of the planet in these last days. Wake up, Bible readers. That time is here, you know? And they just still can't see that. Now, the most crucial thing taking place now, and we know, which the scriptures talk about, is nuclear war. You know, we're on the verge of nuclear war. It's breaking out, and that's what can completely destroy all life. But there's other various scenarios that people have come up with, which could be possible if man's technology was to continue on and mankind was allowed to develop these things. But we know what Yahweh has chosen, because remember, he says, in the days of Noah, so would it be in the coming of the sons of man, okay, and the Son of Man. But in Noah's time, it was water. In the last days, it says the earth has been reserved for fire, okay, and that the heavens will melt with fervent heat and utter destruction. So we know that this is what Yahweh intends to come to pass with the prophecies of nuclear war, which he warned in the very beginning when he gave the laws to mankind. But there are other various things with technology that could possibly wipe mankind out. You know, if mankind was allowed to continue on using nanotechnology, it's be real easy to wipe mankind out with this. And then there's a scenario called the Great Goo, where if these nanobots would continue to allow to go off, they could recreate themselves and completely, wipe out the whole earth and so forth, and destroy everything. Which you can see that could be done if Yahweh would allow that technology to take place. But he's not. He's going to step in before that time and allow mankind through his own actions, through the hatred and the war. And that's the reason why, because you go back to Genesis and you see it was hatred of mankind. It was war. It was the hatred for Yahweh's laws and for one another. But it was war, continual war, which was the mark of Cain. That's why the world will come to almost complete annihilation with nuclear war. Okay? Because war is what mankind has always been placed in his mind. And so Yahweh is going to use that to bring his plan to pass. So the time is here. And all the prophets proclaim various different world conditions which they themselves were living in. And the conditions, including the capability of completely annihilating all living things, are present in this world today. Because, the prophets wrote of these things, but remember, the prophets did not understand the things that they were writing. They wrote various things, and just like the prophet Yahweh wrote about the noise of the chariots and the horses on the top of the mountains and stuff. Well, that's the sound of the thundering sound and stuff that choppers make, which we call choppers today, the helicopters and stuff. And these things are very capable, like it says, they look like locusts, and they're very capable of wiping out an entire city, with the arsenal that they have. And so they wrote of these things, but they could not understand how that could take place, because they had huge armies, but they knew that there was nothing that they could actually go in and take over and destroy the entire world with. But the prophet Moshe, he described the effects of the nuclear bomb. What it would be capable of doing. He talked about the color and the effects of the fallout of it. And yet at his time, he and no one else had any experience with explosives. They didn't even know what it was. Explosives wasn't used at that time period. And yet, the prophecies that he wrote in Deuteronomy 28 go into exact detail and even describes the grayish powder from the burning and the fallout that would go up into the air and come down and fall upon our heads as powder. So he says, surely anyone can see the prophecies that no mere man alone could have written what they wrote by themselves. Surely anyone can see there had to be a superior mind to inspire these prophecies to be written. If you do believe this, the next step is to learn what you can do to save yourself from the horrifying proclaimed world events that are about to take place in your own lifetime. Well, he says what this book is about. This book is exactly what is going to take place in the next few short years. Okay, we've got less than that. But this book takes you through the prophecies written in your own Bible in chronological sequence. Each pertinent detail of Bible prophecy is made so clear that even a child could understand these coming world events and understand the order that they come to pass in. It is very important that each of us knows and understands these prophecies. However, even more important is that you will know what to do to prepare for these events. Throughout the history of mankind, Yahweh has provided the knowledge to save alive those who will humbly submit to his every instruction. Notice, these instructions are revealed and made very clear in this book. The only way to achieve salvation and eternal life is written in this book, The Mark of the Beast, Volume 2, and in the previous book, The Mark of the Beast, Volume 1. Notice that. The only way to achieve salvation and eternal life is written in these books. For an even deeper understanding of our Creator's only established work on earth for these last days, he says, I urge you to obtain our book, The Lost Faith of the Apostles and Prophets, History and Prophecy. And there is no time to waste. For one to escape these soon coming worldwide horrors, one must learn certain things, and then they must do certain things. Okay, so you can't be a hearer only. You have to learn and then do it. This book, The Mark of the Beast, Volume 2, along with the other two books I just mentioned, he says, guides you to Yahweh's prophecies and instructions written by the prophets of old under his inspiration. These books do not proclaim new prophecies, nor do these books interpret prophecies. Remember, because the scripture tells you that no prophecy is of private interpretation. You must let prophecy interpret prophecy. And that's true with anything in Yahweh's word. You know, the laws of Yahweh, the laws interpret the laws. You know, that's why you have the laws, statutes, and judgments. You have all of the things in there that tell you how to keep a particular law. So these books point out scriptural facts, prophetic events, and the historical past leading you to the prophetic present. Notice, it points out prophetic events and the historical past leading you to the prophetic present. Okay, so everything that Yahweh has done, all of his plan is coming to pass. Remember Revelations 10:7, where the seventh Moloch, when he begins to sound, right, he brings these things to completion, all that the prophets have written. Without a doubt, these books are the greatest and most valuable source of information since the Bible itself. Notice that. Greatest and most valuable source of information since the Bible itself. May our Father and Creator Yahweh bless the understanding of those whom he has ordained to study these writings with a mind opened by him. Notice, a mind opened by him. You know, we're so blessed to be able to understand these things. Now remember what Yahweh tells us in Psalms 8. Okay? A mind opened by him. In Psalms 8, yeah. And what it says here, he says, you will make them, Psalms 8 verse 6, you will make them the judges over the works of your hands, and you will put all things under the house of Yahweh at Abel, that they may be led by his laws. Okay? Now in Psalms 8, here in verse 6, he's talking about man. He says, you made man to be ruler over the works of your hands. You will put all things under his feet. And he tells you, names of animals and so forth, right? But if you look up at verse 4, I love verse 4 because he says, what is man that you are mindful of him? Why in the world is Yahweh mindful of puny little man who ain't got enough sense to get out of the rain sometime, right? What is man that you're mindful of him? And the Son of Man that you visit him. You have made him a little lower than the Malachim, but you will crown him with glory and honor. And you're going to make him ruler over your hands. Now notice, that you visit him. Does that mean you come knocking on the door? Yo, hey man, how's it going? That word visit, okay? Well, let's read the bottom note I got down here. The word visit, according to Brown, Driver, and Briggs, it means to set over, okay? To set over, to make as overseer or appoint. So he's talking about an office being given into mankind. That's the only way he's going to be able to rule over all the things that Yahweh has given into him, right? The word visit, according to Gesenius, is number 6485. It means to find wanting and reviewing, to look after anyone as a shepherd. And that's what Yahweh does. He shepherds his flock. To look after, to care for, to command, to charge, to commit, to set over. He's committed all these things into us, right? He's set up over these things to us. Genesis 1, 26 to 28. That's what Yahweh has given us in the very beginning. And he says he's going to put all things under our feet because we're going to control the universe, you know. And we're not going to let anyone change anything against Yahweh's laws. Okay? Oh yeah, one other thing too. In let's see, Job chapter 7. In Job chapter 7, verse 17, he says, What is man that you shall magnify him? Right? He's going to put him over the works of his own hands and make him higher than the Malachim. What is man that you shall magnify him? What is man that you should set your heart on him? Okay? Well, the word set your heart on him, in Gesenius here, it means to come upon. The word on means to come upon the heart, and to occupy it. Well, remember Yeshua said, me and my Father, me and the Father Yahweh will come and make our abode with you, right? Hence, it denotes something super added. Okay? Super added. Now, you remember, Pastor says, we're going to be given the use of the subconscious mind, right? And he said, man, that is so blurred, isn't it? Well, the focus is out. But anyway, he says, you're going to be supermen and superwomen, right? You will have control over everything. He said that in 9/30/2004. So, the supermen and the superwomen, that's what we're going to be, okay? So, we'll be flying around with our little capes. Nah, not really, You won't need your little super skin-tight suit flying around, And you'll be able to do all these things instantaneous, just by a mere thought. By a mere thought, you'll be able to change something and command the microbes. That's the power that Yahweh has and what Yahweh wants to give unto us. But to reach that state, of course, we have to go through this time period. And we have to see this suffering upon this world. And remember, we can go through it too. So we have to get ourselves right with Yahweh so that we can be spared of these things. Okay, so Yahweh gives a commission to the house of Yahweh here on page 1. Chapter 1. He says, severe persecution will take place in the last 3.5 years of the great tribulation against many of Yahweh's people, those who keep the laws of Yahweh and who have the testimony of Yeshua. Yachanan spoke of this certain people in Revelations 12:17, and the dragon was wrought with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the laws of Yahweh and have the testimony of Yeshua the Messiah. And he stood upon the sands of the sea. Now, there's certain people who will be persecuted at the house of Yahweh when it's in the place of safety, okay? Once it's taken to the place of safety. Now, we have a place of safety. This is the protected place, remember, the secret place of the Most High. You read all of these prophecies that has to do with this. In Moshe 3:7, Yahweh says, nothing is going to be taking place without first being prophesied. So he doesn't leave us ignorant. He gives the prophecies and tells us what the prophets have spoken. And Yisrayl Hawkins is the witness in these last days of all of these prophets, that all the prophets have spoken. He's a witness of these things, and he brings forth these prophecies and shows that all of the things that the prophets have spoken are coming to pass, and that in these last days they will come to fruition. Revelations 12, verse 14 says, and to the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness and to her place, where she is nourished for a time, times and a half time, from the face of the serpent, or to avoid the face of the serpent. Okay, in other words, that protection is there. So he says, why one group who keep the commandments of Yahweh and have the testimony of Yeshua protected, while the others who also keep the commandments, okay, and suffers persecution. Well, of course, the reason why they want to suffer persecution, not all are actually, their minds are not all completely converted. Yeshua had that problem too. Remember, he even told his disciples, will you also leave me? Well, you may see some leave in these last days when they get scared. They really see what's taking place and may want to run. In Revelations 12:14, it says, they brought forth the man-child, okay? Now, bringing forth the man-child is not speaking of giving birth to a baby, okay? Just like the nuclear baby doesn't mean giving birth to the baby. But these are prophecies that have to do with these things. In Revelations 12:14, it's speaking of bringing forth or as proclaiming the man, Yeshua, to others. is speaking of the carrying out of the commission given to the house of Yahweh by that man, by Yeshua. So this shows a close connection with the last days house of Yahweh. Because remember, if the house of Yahweh had not been established, then Yeshua Messiah could not hold the office of high priest over the house of Yahweh. He died. He lived his life. He died an excruciating death. He proved himself worthy of Yahweh. And then now what? He just sits up in heaven, you know? He could never be the high priest over the house of Yahweh had this last prophecy of the last house of Yahweh not taken place. Okay? So this shows, and then you remember in Zechariah 6, it tells you that he works directly with Yahweh's witness, Yisrayl Hawkins. So we can see that this had to take place, and there's a close connection between it. So this bringing forth the man-child is speaking of the carrying out the commission given to the house of Yahweh by Yeshua. A commission to take Yahweh's message to all the world by both preaching and publishing it. Okay, and we can reach the whole world. In Matthew 24:14, it says, "And the glad tidings of the kingdom will be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then the end will come." Well, this was never before possible. Never before possible could this take place. But today it can. The preaching can take place. All you got to do is click a mouse, and that's it. And the publications are there. It's available for everything. Everything that the House of Yahweh puts out is available for anyone on the internet. All you got to do is just click on it, download it, and read it in their spare time. You can even do it on your phone. Now, how much convenient is that, you know, to do it on your phone? Now, notice, Matthew 24, verse 14 talks about the preaching, and then Yahweh Mark 13:10 talks about the publishing, okay? So there's two words that are used there, preaching and publishing. So the word has to be preached, but it also has to be written, okay? And that's why Yisrayl Hawkins is called the witness of Yahweh. Because remember, all of those words having to do with those prophecies, even witness means he's a spokesman, he's the writer. You know, he writes these things out and so forth too. And the glad tidings must first be published among all nations. Okay? So the house of Yahweh both preaches through the use of the cassette tape sermon. Anybody got any cassette tapes laying around? Most people don't even know what those are, you know, anymore. But that was something that was used a lot, you know. I mean, we had. I don't know if you remember that one sermon where Pastor talked about when they first got the first one, and it was the master one, you know, and then you connect other units to it, and those were called the slave units, because you have the main one where you put your main tape in and you load up the rest with the tapes, and then you hit the button and it goes through at a fast speed. It take a couple of minutes, about a minute and a half to 2 minutes, usually for a 90-minute tape, and it was done. And then it stopped at the end and it rewound them back. And once they were rewound, then you took them out and then you would test them to make sure that the tape recorded. You know, when you think about the technology, that's just a very thin layer of like plastic, you know, and then it just looks like it's a brown piece of tape, right? That's all it looks like. But yet, when you look at that thing, that's magnetic materials, and all of these little microbes are on there, you know, and it's just caked with magnetic material. And when it passes over the head, of course, the head aligns all of this stuff properly, and then it produces the sound. And that's just mind-boggling. It's passing over a head. What in the world is the head? Oh, well, it's a metal piece and it's got, you know, magnetics on there, and so when the tape passes over, it lines it up. It's just what everybody can say. They can only explain what takes place. How does it take place? Get even deeper than that. What is electricity? Well, electricity is electrons in motion. Well, how do they move? And how do they store within a battery? And how does the battery go dead? Does the battery actually go dead? No, it's still alive because the stuff that's in there is still living beings. you know? But it's like they go into, they can explain things, but they just explain things away. They have no concept of what things are actually made of and how things actually work, you know? And like it says, the technology in the last days would just blow the prophets away to see these things taking place. And yet today, you know, the young people think Adam and Eve talked on cell phones, you know? It's like everything that they have today, that they have no concept that these things were invented and they came about when technology increased and mankind used these things, you know. But 150 years ago, these things did not exist, you know. Most of the stuff in our lifetime now hasn't existed until the last 40 to 50 years, you know, of what the technology that we have today. But all these things show, it just proves Yahweh's prophecies to be true and correct. Okay, let's see. So we have the house of Yahweh both preaches through the use of the cassette taped sermons, or this nowadays it's the CDs with the MP3s, and they publish also through printing press and also through PDF, right, to the internet. Through the prophetic word magazine and the true prophecies, the law, statutes, and judgments of Yahweh. So when the work Yahweh has given to us to do is done, then the end will come. Do you understand now why Pastor always says, hurry, work, get the thing done? Now everybody in the house of Yahweh surely is capable of doing 10 things at one time, right? And getting everything done that we're supposed to get done, you know. So that's the mindset that we have to have, that we can never slow down in the work, and always remember the work has to be done, because what's holding us up? Ourselves. We're holding up this. We are the ones who are holding back the kingdom of Yahweh. Okay, so we have to get this work done, and when the work is done, then the end will come. When the time is right, then Yahweh will tell Yeshua, it's time to go. And then Yeshua will, of course, inspire Yisrayl Hawkins, and he'll tell us, and he will proclaim to the world, Yeshua's coming. Now, the work that Yahweh has given us to do must be done without compulsory cost to anyone. Okay? Leviticus 10, verse 8 says, heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out demons, freely you have received and freely give. Now, that is something that is the power that and the authority that every priest is given when they are ordained into the house of Yahweh, is to be able to do these things. But of course, the whole house as a unit together do these things, okay? Heal the sick. Well, how do you heal the sick? Well, if you know something that worked for you, and somebody else is sick and you tell them about it and they try and it helps them, you just partook of healing the sick, right? Because you looked out for the love of your brother and you helped him in that manner. Or if you need to know what to do, you seek the house of Yahweh and says, okay, I've got this condition, what's best? All right? And the house of Yahweh will tell you and show you. Cleanse the lepers. Now, it's not just talking about leprosy where the skin rots off the flesh of the body, okay? But the lepers represent all bodily diseases that exist today. And notice, cleanse the lepers. That's a law. Remember that. Don't forget, it is a law of Yahweh to cleanse your bodies. And the feast is coming up, and you must keep that law and cleanse your body so your mind can be cleansed when the feast of Yahweh comes about. If you fail to do that, then you fail to keep Yahweh's law and you have sinned. And you're going to suffer for it. Because when you cleanse your body, you also cleanse your mind. And that's the law of Yahweh. So that is, of course, you're only taught these things through the house of Yahweh. Okay? And then to raise the dead. Well, we're learning now. By you being obedient, submissive to Yahweh, to his house, to those in authority over you, you are going to be given the power to raise the dead. But if you don't learn the lesson of being submissive to those in authority over you, you will not receive the power to raise the dead, because you won't deserve to have that power. Don't think you got it made just because you're in the house of Yahweh that, hey, I'm going to kick back, man, I'm going to have all the power. It's going to be given to me. It's not. If you have that attitude where you buck up at all against authority, you will not receive that authority, because it's not promised to everyone. It's only promised to those who will overcome and fight and push this down, okay? And so that's, remember, we're being judged on our efforts, the efforts that we put forth to Yahweh. That Yahweh sees us, and he judges our hearts and our minds, and he knows these things. So he says, all tapes, all the literature and everything that is sent out is free of charge from the house of Yahweh, okay? And, of course, this is for the purpose of bringing forth the man. Page 3 here says, Malachi, he reads in Malachi 3, verses 8 through 10, will a man rob Yahweh? Yet you have robbed me. Now, this is Yahweh speaking. And he says, will a man rob Yahweh? Yahweh is the creator. Are you going to rob Yahweh? And yet you have robbed me, Yahweh says. Notice. But you say, well, wherein have we robbed you? And he tells us, in tithes and in offerings. Tithes and offerings. Now, maybe you do tithe. But have you ever misused, quote, unquote, misused Yahweh's tithe? If you have, you're guilty of that. You have robbed Yahweh. You have no excuse to misuse the tithe. That is Yahweh's tithe. It's not yours. And that's the reason why Yahweh says in his laws that when someone steals something, you must pay the owner back. And then you add the 1/5 to it. So when someone thinks that, man, I can't make it, I got to use that, I'll just have to pay it back, you just screwed yourself, because if you can't afford something, quote unquote, and you steal the tithe, now you got to pay back the tithe and add 1/5 to it. So what benefit was it? You see, that's what Yahweh tries to get us to thinking about, that we will curse ourselves if we do the things that Yahweh says don't do, and he says tithes and offerings. Well, and offerings are the law. Yahweh says, don't appear before me empty-handed. And that's at the feast time. But he also says that offerings must be done throughout the year, right? You had the sacrifices, the morning and evening sacrifices, every day of the year. What's your offering to Yahweh every day? What do you do? What do you do for Yahweh every day? You can get up and you can work your butt off all day long and get 1 hour of sleep and jump back up and keep going again. But if your attitude stinks and your attitude is not right with Yahweh, you just wasted your whole day. Your offering has to be with the right intentions before Yahweh in order for Yahweh to find it acceptable. Because you can offer up whatever you want. See, he taught us these things whenever he talked about just like the atonement money, okay? It's set for a certain amount. But he says the rich man will not give more, nor the poor man less. But he's showing you whether someone is rich or poor, they're equal. This is the set price that you must pay for the atonement money. And that is to remind you that your sin, that you need to be atoned for. That everybody is equal in that sense. So all of these things Yahweh gives us is to get us to thinking about these things. He says, you are cursed with the curse. You have robbed me. Yes, this whole nation. The whole nation. Because of the fact that Israel was supposed to be a chosen nation. And yet they gave that up. They gave that up. They cursed themselves. They actually brought a curse upon themselves. Bring you all the tithes into the storehouse, into the house of Yahweh, that there may be food in my house, notice. And prove me now, says Yahweh of hosts, if I will not open to you the windows of heaven and pour out in blessing, that there shall not be enough room to receive it. And of course, you see that promise given in the 6th year when it comes time for the sabbatical year. But also always, Yahweh says always, he will give you, if you've given to him what is his. Remember Yeshua said, given to Caesar what is Caesar's, but given to Yahweh what is Yahweh's. Okay? Well, even what you've given to Caesar, that's actually Yahweh's, because Yahweh owns it all. However, he does say, remember, he will reign upon the just and the unjust. Prophet Daniel said that he puts in office those whom he will, and he takes out those who he wills. So whoever is in office and whoever whatever man's government is set up and so forth, we still must be submissive to that and show proper respect to one another, because we're respecting and keeping Yahweh's laws when we do. Chaga 1, verses 5 through 9, he says, "Now therefore, thus says Yahweh of hosts, consider your ways. You have sown much, but you bring in little. You eat, but not enough. You drink, but you're not filled with drink. You clothe, but there is none warm. And he that earns wages to put it in a bag of holes. Thus says Yahweh of hosts, consider your ways." Consider your ways, because that's what he's telling you. You know, it says you sow much, but you bring in little. You know, people who don't think about things and do things properly, they waste. They waste money, they waste time, they waste their resources and so forth. There's no increase there if it's not done according to Yahweh's laws. He says you eat, but you don't have enough. You know, the thing is that, you know, what we're supposed to be eating is eating the word of Yahweh and feeding on these things. If you don't do it enough, if we don't keep the laws of Yahweh properly, and read from his law every day, as the scripture says, then we suffer. You drink, but you're not filled with drink. You know, if you're not drinking in the golden oil and taking these things into us and clothing ourselves with righteousness, then we're going to be cold. We're not going to be warm. And then if you earn wages and put it in a bag with holes. Just like, I mean, you know, if you took your money, your hard-earned money, and you put it in a bag with holes and started traveling with that bag dangling at your side, by the time you got someplace, you probably wouldn't have much left in that bag, right? Well, that's the way Yahweh says, that if we don't give honor and glory to Yahweh with everything that we have, you know, our bodies, our lives, everything, then it's useless. It means nothing. So he says, consider your ways. Go up to the mountain, notice, and bring wood and build the house, and I will take pleasure in it, and I will be glorified, says Yahweh. Go up to the mountain and build the house, okay? Bring that wood, okay? Build the house of Yahweh up. Build it up with one another. He says, you look for much, and lo, it came to little. And when you brought it home, I did blow upon it. In other words, not that Yahweh blew upon it, okay, but he allowed this to take place as a testing to us. Remember, it also says, don't be tossed about with every different wind of doctrine, right? The blowing upon it. Because we have to be tested. We have to be proven to see, are we going to keep the laws of Yahweh and understand them and follow them, or are we not? He says, why, says Yahweh's host, because mine house is laid waste, and you run every man after his own house. So we have to be careful that we don't just look after our own selves, but also look upon Yahweh. Okay? So these tithes should be used to build the house of Yahweh by bringing forth the man, by preaching and publishing the word of Yahweh into all the world. As the Apostle Shalom said, 1 Corinthians 9, 16 and 18, but though I preach the glad tidings, I have nothing to glory of, for necessity is laid upon me. Yea, woe unto me if I preach not the glad tidings. What is my reward then? Verily that I preach the glad tidings, that I may make the glad tidings of the Messiah without charge, that I abuse not my power in my glad tidings. Without charge. You know, and the Apostle Shaul himself even said, hey, you know, at one time, I mean, the Apostle Shaul always worked for a living, okay? And you know, at one time he says, you know, the people were murmuring and complaining. He says, hey, don't I have the right? He says, I have the right to be able to collect the tithe and to live off the tithe. But I don't do it. But he says, don't I have the right to be just like the other priests who carry their wives around with them in the ministry and so forth and are taken care of and stuff? He says, but I don't do this. He says, I work so that I can give more unto you. And that's why you see where the Apostle Shaul was a tallit maker and stuff, and he worked and did things. He worked for a living and stuff and did things and set these things aside so that he could give it to others and actually pay for his way throughout the ministry and so forth. Because it says, we, the house of Yahweh, do not charge anything. Okay, we don't charge anything for any of the literature or any of the things that's sent out. And I got to remember now, you're commanded to pay tithe. Okay, so when tithe is paid, it's not like you're paying for the literature and so forth. Okay, what you're doing is you're paying your tithe, and that tithe is being used to help get that literature out to others. Okay, but it's not like as if you're having to pay for something to get something. The house of Yahweh gives things out. It's there. Because remember, that tithe ain't yours to begin with. It's Yahweh's. Okay? So when you receive something through the house of Yahweh, that's Yahweh giving it to you, giving it right back to you. So we have to have our hearts into this work, because that's what it's all about, is believing and doing the work. Yeshua said in Matthew 6:21, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Right? So we have to think about, where is our treasure? Is the treasure the work of Yahweh? If it is, then that's where our heart's going to be. And if our heart is there, then that means that Yahweh is writing his laws in our hearts and in our minds. And so our heart is there to think about the love that we have for the work of Yahweh and the love for the brethren. And then our minds are constantly thinking upon these things throughout the day. I mean, think right now. Just take a moment and think about how you handle things during the day. You know, you think about Yahweh. Before you came to the Yahweh's house, how did you think about these things? You know, you'd lose your temper, you would rant and rave, you'd be full of hatred and revengeful. You don't want to retaliate against people because of the stuff that they did to you. You'd steal stuff off the jobs and so forth. You know, you'd do whatever you wanted to do. But now your mindset is completely different from that. It's completely different. Now you think about the love of Yahweh. That's the work of Yahweh. And you can see how Yahweh has changed our hearts and our minds to bring us really to a way of peace. Because now we never think about not even touching somebody else's property, because we realize that that can bring war. The simple thing of touching someone else's thing, that leads to world war, even nuclear destruction. And so Yahweh has taught us these things, but unless we had a mind of understanding, you remember what we read in the very beginning, where Pastor says the very last thing, may Yahweh bless the understanding of those who has ordained to study these writings with the mind that's opened by him. Unless our minds were open, we still would be in darkness. You remember? The God of this world has blinded the minds of the people. That's why they can't understand these things. They can't see these things. But they pick up on us. They know you're from the house of Yahweh by the way that you carry, simply by the way you carry yourself. You don't even have to tell them you're a Hawkins. You know, they just automatically know by the way that you carry yourself. They know that there's something different about you, and they'll pick it out. They'll figure that out on their own. Okay, look on page 5 here, where it talks about the preach not the glad, woe unto me if I preach not the glad tidings, like the apostle just said. Okay, he says you may not be actually preaching yourself, but by placing your tithes where they belong in the work of Yahweh, then Yahweh has called you and commissioned this for the last days, then you are very much a part of Yahweh's work. Because, you know, right now, sometimes for some people, that's all that they can do. They don't have the opportunity to get involved in the work of Yahweh. But if you're here and you do have the opportunity, you need to take it. You know? You have no excuse. Yahweh's promise to those who do his work is that they will be taken to a place of safety to be hidden from the wrath of Satan for the last 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation, which of course has been cut short, remember. Revelations 12:15, and to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time, times, and a half a time from the faith, or to avoid the face of the serpent. The house of Yahweh is called from the scriptures the Philadelphia group. Philadelphia means brotherly love, okay, which ties in with the 2 witnesses from the 2 brothers, okay. And also, of course, the word Philadelphia means Abel, okay. So the ones of Philadelphia, or Abel, love one another enough that they're willing to sacrifice to get Yahweh's truth out to those who have yet to hear it. You know, and Yahweh, remember, it says in Hebrews that Yahweh is not, you know, when it says in Romans, when Yahweh is not slack concerning his promise, but in Hebrews it says that Yahweh does not forget our works. Okay? He doesn't forget those things. He knows. And he searches the heart and the mind. He knows if someone puts in their time and their efforts, and maybe don't have everything that they'd like to have right now, you're going to be greatly rewarded. Yahweh says that because we're not working for the things of this life, you know. And you can see that when people who have more money than they know what to do with, the more they have, the more greedy they are, the more that they want to make. And what do they do with it? Go pay $1 million for a toothbrush? You know? Just because they got the money and they can spend it, just go waste it on stuff. You know? Clothes and stuff like that. You know, the very same things that you find that they'll pay hundreds of dollars for, you can find them in these clearance places, in these outlet places, the same exact stuff for you know, tens of dollars, you know. But yet, because they have the prestige and they have the power and the money, they'll pay the top dollar prices for all of these things. Well, people know that, you know, and that's why they make these things. And that's why the scripture talks about the merchandise, you know, the merchants of this world. You know, and they're going to be crying. I mean, you figure that when it talks about the ships will go out and they won't see anything. There's places right now, they may still be sitting out there, but there's places sitting out in ports, out away from the ports, that they don't know what they're going to be doing. You know, the people, the crews are pretty much almost starving. They're hungry. They want to go home and stuff, you know. But the ships are sitting out there because they don't know what to do with them. They can't. You know, the company have gone bankrupt or whatever, and so now what do you do with the merchandise, you know, and stuff. And so it causes a lot of problems, and people are very poor who work on those ships and stuff. And you know that when you can buy a product for 99 cents. 99 cents, and some things you can even find cheaper. And you can buy this from Hong Kong or China, and that includes shipping costs. 99 cents. And they're going to build that product. Somebody's going to make that product. Somebody's going to put it in the envelope. Somebody's going to load that up on a truck and so forth, and they're going to put it on the ship. And they're going to ship it from overseas, over the ocean, to a dock someplace. And then they're going to take that container and they're going to truck it, or they're going to put it on rail until it gets to a certain place. And then they're going to put it on the post office, and it's going to travel hundreds of thousands of miles through the post office to get to your door. For 99 cents? How is that possible? It's all part of the merchandising. It's all part of the merchant system. And this is why people are going to be saying, what are they going to do with the stuff that they have? But it shows how they're using these people and how these people are making nothing that are making these things. Because if they can afford to do something like that for 99 cents, how much are they stealing from these people and abusing these people? Because they know the people need jobs. They need to survive, and they'll use them. And that's the wickedness. And that's why the scripture condemns these great men of the earth and these merchants, because the merchants are the ones ones who are following Satan's way. And this is why the scriptures tells you in Yekeskia that, Satan loves the merchandise, and she loves the merchants of the earth, and she leads and guides and inspires them, because that's the one thing is power and money that everybody wants. And that's the one thing that she uses so much in this world to be able to influence the hearts and the minds of the people and pull them away from Yahweh. Because Yeshua said, blessed are the poor, right? Blessed are the poor. And Yahweh says, we'll always have the poor among us. So finishing up here, he says, I know your works, okay? Behold, I have set before you an open door, and no man can shut it. In other words, when Yahweh does something, you ain't going to do nothing about it, okay? It's going to accomplish what he sets it out for. For you have a little strength, and we do. We're not a mighty, powerful organization, and people are amazed at the work that we put out, because we have a little bitty operation here. But you have kept my word, notice, and you have not denied my name. You have not denied my name. Of course, it doesn't just mean not, calling upon the name of Yahweh, but remember the word name means character and authority and so forth. So all of these things, Yahweh says he's given to those who will believe, those who have their minds open, where they won't allow Satan to deceive them. Remember, it's a choice. We can't say you can't be deceived, because Yeshua said you can. Even the very elect would be. But you have to choose not to be deceived. But Yahweh says if you guard your mind and let him write the laws in your hearts and your minds, then you're going to have all the things that you need to be able to stay equipped to be able to fight against the adversary. And there's nothing that she can do. All we got to do is resist her. Get thee hence, Satan. That's all you got to say. And you know what? No matter how powerful this being is, she's got a choice to do one thing. Get the hell out of here. That's it. She's got to listen to that command. And that's the command that you have. That Yahweh said, that's the power and authority that you have. You can resist the adversary. But you can turn right around and let him come on back too. Okay? Remember, she don't give up easy. But she's got to listen to you if you stand firm, because she can't fight against that. And the gates of hell are not going to prevail in these last days. May Yahweh bless you, man.